Okay, I'd like to call the meeting of the Board of Public Utilities for the City of Santa Rosa to order. If we may have a roll call, please.
Chairman Galvin.
Here.
Vice Chair Count.
Here.
Board Member Arnone.
Here.
Board Member Dowd.
Here.
Board Member Grable.
Here.
Board Member Watts.
Here.
Any statements of abstention by board members? Hearing none, we'll move on to our board reorganization. At this time, we're going to swear in our newest member. Lisa is here. And also, we're going to re-swear in two reappointed members. Board members Watt and Dowd.
Right there, and there, and there. Testing, can you hear me? Okay, good. There I go. Right. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, please state your name for the record. Do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. All right, congratulations.
Welcome, everyone. Now that we're all seated and rearranged, as I had mentioned at the end of our last meeting, I neglected to give new board member Grable an opportunity to make some remarks about himself and his desire to serve on the board, and I will do the same thing, Lisa, with you in just a moment. So I'll give you a couple minutes of warning. Board member Grable.
Hi, well, I'm honored to serve on the board with all of you. I was interested in serving on the Board of Public Utilities primarily because when I was younger, I worked in rural Mexico installing potable water systems in remote villages in Chiapas. And I learned then that clean and safe drinking water is essential for any healthy community. It's sort of the first thing that you should do and maintain and manage really well for a community's independence and overall health, especially for the children. More recently, it's come to my attention through working with both the county and some of my building projects. I'm a general contractor here in Sonoma County. It's come to my attention how important water management practices and water storage practices are to the future and vitality of our agriculture industries, our clean drinking water supply, and the future thereof. It's also one of my big passions is climate change and coming up with creative and viable strategies for mitigating climate change and really taking bold steps here in Sonoma County against some of these global processes and showing that we can do them in ways that are both effective and viable and increase economic prosperity and the health of everyone.
Great. Well, thank you, and welcome again to the board. Board Member Banfort, welcome. If you'd like to say a few words, we'd be happy to hear from you.
Thank you very much. I'll I'll keep it short and sweet. My background, I accidentally got interested in natural resources and California water. I started out as a social worker in health and human services and accidentally started to work and had the great fortune to work as a legislative staffer for two members in my 20s who focused primarily on ag and natural resources policy. Today, I work for a local nonprofit that also works at the systems level in food systems and water systems. And the city of Santa Rosa is my home, so I'm incredibly fortunate and appreciative. Thank you.
Great, well, thank you and welcome. We look forward to working with both of you. And fortunately, I think you're going to see this as one of our shorter meetings, so we won't take too much of your time today. So we have no study session, we have no minutes to approve, we have no staff briefings, and we have no consent items. So we will move to item 8.1, which is a report from the Water Agency on the transmission budget and water rate increase. Interim Director Reed.
So Lynn Roselli, who is the finance manager, will be doing the presentation. I did want to preface this with letting you know that I did serve on the budget review subcommittee of the technical advisory committee, and we met a number of times with the water agency. They were very responsive. They came in with a substantially higher proposal to start with, answered all of our questions, and then came in with a proposal that the budget subcommittee of the technical advisory committee can support. So take it away, Lynn.
That we're providing, and to keep the rate increase within that 4 to 6% range that's informed by the long-range financial plan. And that was a large challenge this year in particular because we looked back over about 3 or 4 years, and we've seen a dramatic decrease in deliveries of 27%. Which made it to City of Santa Rosa for turf removal under the Integrated Regional Water Management Plan 2015 round. So we're able to pass through funds to the City of Santa Rosa. So the budget also includes bond funds, debt service for the bond funds for our 2012 and 2015 water revenue bonds. And then there's the discretionary charges. We look to the water contractors for input on an aqueduct capital charge that they want to set to build fund balance for future capital projects to, again, smooth rates, keep rates from, rate spikes. So we came up with a total, on the Santa Rosa aqueduct, we came up with a total rate increase of total rate of $846.78, which represents a 4.98% rate increase. So this is the basic rate setting calculation. The restructured agreement for water supply prescribes how we set the rate. It is, we divide the cost of operations by water deliveries, and the water deliveries are the lesser of the last 12 months or the 3-year annual average. And you can see that the 3-year annual average is much higher, so we take the lower, the 41,446 acre feet. We do the math, and we come up with that rate of $847 per acre foot. So compared to look at how the budget is allocated and what portion of the pie each function takes, operations and maintenance is 56%, capital projects make up 14%, the aqueduct capital funds make up 2%, biological compliance, water supply planning, water conservation make up 17%, and debt service is 11%. And compared to last year's expenditures, budgeted expenditures, you can see the bottom line there, the total. We are saving or reducing expenditures by $1.72 million. And while, and that is in response to the fact that we have had much lower deliveries. So we really made a big effort to look for ways to really cut back on total expenditures. And while operations and maintenance is going up $2 million, you can see that we found ways in other areas to offset those increases. So operations and maintenance is increasing primarily due to some large non-routine maintenance projects that had been deferred during the earlier drought years, but are included in this budget. And again, we did look for ways to spread those costs out over a number of years so it wouldn't hit just next fiscal year. Capital projects are going down. We have several capital projects, hazard mitigation projects primarily, They're budgeted in this fiscal year. They will continue into next year, but the bulk of the budget is this fiscal year, so the budget for next fiscal year is $2.97 million less, a reduction in $2.97 million. And then the biological opinion compliance, water supply planning, water conservation, that is decreasing $1.29 million. That's largely due to the draft flow EIR and final flow EIR projects occurring primarily this year and last year. And so they will continue into next year, but the bulk of the work has been occurring up to this point. And the Urban Water Management Plan was submitted earlier this year. So that is not included in this budget. And then there's the long range, the local recycled water tier 2 program is not budgeted for next fiscal year either. We have debt service increasing by $540,000. That is a result of the $12 million in new money bonds that had been issued. We were able to offset that increase a little bit by refinancing the 2006 bonds, but that rate is primarily for the 2012 and 2015 water revenue bonds. And then the aqueduct capital contribution is the same as last year, so there's no increase there. So we end up with a net decrease in expenditures of $1.72 million. And you can see on the bottom that we're using grants and use of fund balance and bond proceeds more this year than next year, but whatever isn't, if the grant funds aren't reimbursed this fiscal year, we'll roll them over into next fiscal year. So that certainly helps offset any rate increase and offset the expenditures. So as I mentioned, we have been dealing with a historic drought. We have had significant 27% drop in water deliveries. We are constrained by the restructured agreement for water supply. It is a volumetric-based rate only, and when deliveries go down, revenues go down, and that puts downward pressure on, revenues and on what we can spend. And so due to the drought, this has been fairly significant in pushing rates up, but we've been able to keep them in the 4 to 6% range because we've budgeted grants, use of fund balance, and bond proceeds to soften the rates. The impact to the rate payers, and also use, cut expenditures as well. And this graphic is to show you that, over the past 10 years and even before then, we were enjoying 60 to 65,000 acre feet in deliveries. But due to some amazing water conservation efforts, we have seen decreasing deliveries over the years. And in 13-14, you see the 54,963 acre feet in deliveries. And from that point forward, we're seeing that 27% drop in deliveries, which directly impacts revenue. And in those years where we do have actual deliveries above budget, we leave that in our fund balance and use that when deliveries drop. We're able to use that fund balance to make up the difference and make up that gap. So we just wanted to go over a few capital projects and the large non-routine maintenance projects that we are looking at in the budget for next year. The Russian River and Mark West Creek Crossing hazard mitigation projects are scheduled to go to construction next fiscal year. There's the Ralphine Tanks flow-through conversion project, which is primarily a water quality project, and the isolation valves hazard mitigation project. Those are both under construction now, but will continue next year. And then we have the large non-routine maintenance project. A couple of examples are the tank recoats, the water storage tank recoats. We have 6 tanks that we are recoating. We have to replace the cathodic protection systems within those tanks, and we have the added effort at the Castaigne tank to remove the coal tar interior coating. We update this slide every year just to see how we measure up against other wholesale water contractors. Our wholesale rate per acre foot is 847 acre feet on the Santa Rosa Aqueduct, and you can see that all of the other rates are higher. We don't mean this to be an apples-to-apples comparison to other wholesale water contractors because they have different customer bases, different rate structures, different regulatory requirements. But when they were raising rates 10 to 30% because of the drought, we were able to keep ours in that range of 4 to 6% despite the sharp and dramatic decrease in deliveries. And with that, we'll just wrap up by saying reiterating that the rate is based on 41,446 acre-feet in deliveries. The rate is $846.78. It's a 4.98% rate increase. It allows us to operate and maintain the system, maintain fund balance, build a prudent reserve essentially, and keep the rate increase within that 4 to 6% range. And we will be presenting to the TAC, and there will be a vote on March 6th. We are presenting to city councils. I believe we have the Santa Rosa City Council on March 14th. There will be a vote by the WAC on Monday, April 3rd, and then this will be adopted by our board, presented into and adopted by our board of directors before April 30th in accordance with the restructured agreement for water supply. And with that, we are open to questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Board member questions? Board member Dowd?
Thank you for the presentation. I would ask you to expand a little bit. One of the things that we live with in this area is earthquakes.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully they don't happen, but they seem to.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the water agency has been doing a lot of work about making the aqueduct, since we have to move water from one place to another, setting the system up so that it won't be down for a long time by valves and others. And my question really is, while you're cutting down some of the capital projects in this proposed year, are we still moving forward well enough on making our aqueduct somewhat earthquake sufficient?
So the isolation valves is one of the projects that's occurring now that has FEMA grant funds offsetting. The Russian River crossing and the Mark West Creek crossing, we're taking that aqueduct pipeline and lowering it 30 feet below the liquefaction zone. Those two projects will be going to construction next fiscal year. They had originally been budgeted in this fiscal year, and that's why you're seeing that decrease in capital funds, but they were delayed slightly due to CEQA requirements. But those are two other projects. We are also in line to get grant funding, FEMA funding for the Santa Rosa Creek Crossing project. So we will be implementing that as well. And we have a local hazard mitigation plan that we are updating next fiscal year. And we will continue to work on moving projects forward and to get funding through FEMA to implement those projects as well. So we believe we're making very good progress, and we believe that those projects are very representative of what we need to be doing to make the system more secure. And to keep it from, it would be significant if we had an earthquake that damaged the water transmission system.
Yes.
So it's very important to us.
Board member Watts?
Thank you for your presentation, especially explaining where we're cutting costs in order to decrease the burden of the rate increase. You mentioned a few times the 4 to 6% range. Can you explain that a little bit and where that range was selected?
Well, that range comes from the long-range financial plan. The long-range financial plan is a tool that we use to take all of the projects, the biological opinion compliance projects, large maintenance projects, all of the capital projects. We figure in all of the maintenance operations and maintenance costs, and we look at a plan of how to spread those costs out over time and what rate, it helps us, it outputs what rate increases would be needed and what bonds need to be issued when in order to implement those projects. So it is something where we have worked very extensively on planning out the projects and when they will occur. And I believe we provided Linda with a summary table of when those projects will go to construction. And the plan actually helps us know what the rate increase is going to be. And we have noticed over time that the range is 4 to 6% to accomplish the projects in the time frame and offset by bond funding and grant funds and those other factors. It doesn't necessarily mean that we will be constrained to 4 to 6%. If deliveries do rebound to some extent, we're hoping we could get down to 3-2%. And we're hopeful we could get there, and we plan to do that. We don't plan to just stick with that 4 to 6%, but that is kind of a guideline that we have been using, and we use it to make sure we're really, sticking to the higher level of that, and, not doing those 10%, 20%, 30% rate increases, and trying to smooth out the impact over time.
Any other board member? Board Member Grable?
Yeah, thank you. I'd like a little bit of a clarification on exactly how the rate increases are determined. It looks like what you're saying is the operation and maintenance costs have gone up a bit, right? And the deliveries have gone down, which means, correct me if I'm wrong, people are using less water based
That's right.
on the incentives that were put out there for the drought and mitigation strategies. Over time, I guess my concern is that, especially with low flow technologies, and it seems that from the building department standpoint, from county code standpoint, they're trying to minimize usage through both hardware and behavior. Now, to me, that means that deliveries will continue to go down if that's the case. Now, population may also increase, and then deliveries will increase. That is another issue. Hopefully we can get some more housing and more people to relocate here. But I guess my broader concern is if operations and maintenance costs go up steadily and deliveries go down steadily, doesn't that mean that over time the rate increase would have to be more to account for that in the future?
So the rate increase is very sensitive. Like we said, it is restricted by the restructured agreement. It is volumetric. When deliveries go down, rates go up.
Right.
And obviously, if expenditures go up overall, that makes it even a broader impact. We don't, although we are still concerned with conservation and making sure that conservation occurs, we are expecting some form of rebound. We know that water deliveries are contingent upon economics, the economic environment, climate change, water contractors, management of their systems, and other factors that do impact the rate. What we do is we look for grant funds, we issue bonds, we use fund balance, and we plan out projects and spread them out over time, and we use that methodology to keep the rate increase from getting out of control and trying to keep it smooth. So even if operations go up, there may be other places where they can be cut. We don't anticipate that operations and maintenance expenses are just going to continue to go up. In fact, over the last 10 years, they've been pretty consistently flat, an average of 20,000. So some years they're a little bit higher, some years they're a little bit lower. These large maintenance projects put a little bit of upward pressure on that. But again, we find other ways in other locations. We did a lot of work this particular year with prioritizing projects and dropping off projects that were of much lower priority, so that we would just budget for those projects that were much higher priority and more critical and more cost-effective to do now than to wait and pay much more money later on.
No, yeah, I have no issue with that. I just, over the long term, I see there being a problem not incentivizing behaviors that actually conserve water. So if there's not an incentive to conserve water, because your rates will actually go up the more you conserve, you know what I mean? I wonder, are there bonds and grants specifically for counties that conserve more per capita than other?
Not specifically.
In terms of offsetting that strange sort of relationship between conservation and good behavior, but then,
Right, there is
increasing of
that
rates.
tension. There is that, definitely that tension. We don't have any control over how much water you pull from us, right?
Of course.
Although I know that, the majority of water you have is from us, but nonetheless, we are very concerned with conservation. We plan to continue the message. We hope to be able to buffer the rebound in water use that might occur as a result of the fact that the drought is over. But we don't foresee an ongoing issue, with the long-range financial plan, we don't foresee an ongoing issue, even if we stayed at 40,000 acre feet. We don't foresee an ongoing issue with rate increases that would take us out of that 4 to 6%.
No, for sure.
Mike, do you want to say anything else about that?
Yeah, let me just, Mike Osman, I'm Division Manager at the Water Agency, and the one thing I've mentioned that Lynn did a great job of explaining where how we control costs, but the one thing I would mention is that our delivery projections aren't completely out of thin air. It's not like we take, in 14-15 we delivered 55,000 acre feet or whatever it was, and we just draw a straight line. They're actually well informed. There's a lot of collaboration and a lot of coordination with all of the contractors when they develop their urban water management plans, and a lot of thought goes into that. And like Lynn mentioned, there's a lot of factors beyond just conservation at the residential level. There's economic factors that play a role in how we come up with those projections. And I think that in the long run, you will see increases, because if you project growth, you're going to see increases. And the good news is that the conservation and the low flow and the low water use regulations that are in place allow for that growth with the water supply that we have today.
Right.
So it really works for everybody. And it answers a lot of the questions that people have about development and growth when it comes to water because of those actions that we're taking. And lastly, just because I'm up here, I'd mentioned there's another side, a positive side effect to the conservation. And that's when you think about the 3 categories, large categories of capital projects that we do, the most important, I think, being hazard mitigation. Hazard mitigation projects, earthquake does not care how much water you're going to deliver. It's going to come when it's going to come, and we need to be ready for it. So not a function of water deliveries. Replacement of our existing infrastructure that is capital in nature, also not a function of how much water you deliver. There's this other component, the most expensive component, that's a direct function of how much water you deliver, and that's capacity projects. That's larger pipelines, larger aqueducts. They're very disruptive, they're very expensive. Because of the conservation that everybody's done, we've been able to push those out, in some cases up to 20 years. And that's a positive thing. That's reducing our costs and our overhead, and we're building that into our long-range financial plan. So I don't want to take any more time away from Lynn, but I just wanted to make a couple of points. I think it's an excellent question, and it's really one worth exploring, and I'm glad you brought it up, because I think sometimes we too quickly say, just stop all the growth or all the development, when there's actually, that's not what's at issue in many cases. So thank you.
Board Member Arnone.
I have a question about slide number 5, where we're comparing expenditures from FY 16-17 to 17-18. And I want to make sure I'm reading the chart correctly. It appears that in 16-17 you had total expenditures, or the budget of 40.9 million, but you offset that cost with 14.8 million worth of grants, fund balances, and bond proceeds, whereas this year, in this budget, you're only anticipating an offset of $860,000. Now, I believe I heard you say there were 12 million in bonds issued last year, so that would account for a big chunk of that. But there's still another 2 million differential between those 2 years, and I was wondering what changed. Was there no more fund balance to use? Were there fewer grants? What was the where did that $2 million get lost?
Where did I'm not sure I understand where the 2 million got lost.
Where did we lose an additional $2 million offset? I mean, you had 14 million to offset your expenses last year. Now we have 860,000 to offset your expenses this year. And so 12 of that 14 was bonds. And so what was the other reduction in offsets that were available for the 17-18 budget?
Well, we cut expenditures by 1.72 million. But that's the 39.
The bottom line is revenues that are offsetting expenses, right?
Right.
Yeah, no, I think I understand your question.
Okay.
There's 14 million, knock off 12, now you've got 2.8 last year versus this year. And the answer to your question is yes. Yes, it is a combination of both the grants that were available, that were already allocated and budgeted toward capital projects,
Okay.
and let's face it, I mean, you can only go to the fund balance well for so long, and we've worked really hard to try to meter that out. There are some folks that want to tell us, just take it all in 1 year and give us a rate decrease. We don't think that's prudent, because let's not forget that 41,446 acre feet that you see there is a projection. And if that doesn't come in, which we have seen in recent years, that projection not come in, we have to go to fund balance then to pay for the operation. So what we try to do is find this balance between using the fund balance that we accrued in years where we had deliveries in excess of our budget, and that balance between using that for rate subsidy, essentially, and keeping a prudent reserve set aside so that way we can continue to do the vital operations, construct the vital projects for earthquakes and all the things like that. So I think it's a great question because it jumps out at you, right? I mean, 14 here, but that's really it. I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I guess it raises another question in my mind as to how much fund balance did you use last year, and how much fund balance are you using this year? How much grants did you get last year, and how much grants did you get this year? Those are the two questions that pop out.
Right, and it does vary, and this is the budget, this is not the actual. So if we don't spend all of that 14.88, I mean, if we don't use all of that 14.88, meaning grants, we need to, go back to the grant agencies for reimbursement. Maybe we haven't been reimbursed yet. So those will roll over to next fiscal year, and the 2 years are connected or linked in that way, that anything that is basically left over from this year will roll over into next year. So we do have a breakdown of how much was grants and how much is fund balance. I think we used $6.8 million in fund balance last fiscal year.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was because it was built up when we had 54,900 acre feet in deliveries. So we were able to apply that as the rates dropped significantly. And I don't know.
I was just going to say, and we can follow up with Linda so that she can get back to you with the specifics. That's a good question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other board member questions? I had just one question on slide number 10. Can you explain the different charges that the Sonoma Aqueduct is getting that we aren't? Looks like they've got a loan balance that they're must have borrowed some money from you, and then they're getting a little higher charge on the capital charges and the prime contractor charges.
Oh, on Sonoma Aqueduct, yes. So the Sonoma Aqueduct has an aqueduct bond charge. They built the Eldridge-Madrone pipeline. So they were responsible on the Sonoma Aqueduct for paying for that, the debt service on that bond. So that is why their bond and loan charge is higher. They also have a higher capital charge. They have chosen to increase that capital charge because they have some projects that are coming up. They are hazard mitigation projects that are coming up, and they have a small customer base, so they don't generate a lot of revenue into their fund to cover those costs. So they're trying to boost up their aqueduct capital charge to prepare for the expenditures on those hazard mitigation projects, to supplement the bond proceeds and grant funds that we might be able to get.
Great, thank you. Very good. Thank you so much for your presentation. We will move now to item 8.2, which is our water supply update.
Excuse me, can you make a motion to consider the budget and recommend it to council, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I move to make a recommendation to City Council that they in turn make a recommendation to the Water Advisory Committee to approve the SCWA budget and proposed water rate increase.
I'll second.
Motion by Vice Chair Cowan, seconded by Board Member Watts. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we'll move to the water supply update.
Okay, Colin Close, Sustainability Coordinator, will be presenting as our deputy directors are engaged elsewhere. Thank you, Colin.
Where's the races? Over here. Second. Unless you know how to do that. There you go. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the board. As was stated, I'm Colin Close, Water Use Efficiency Coordinator here on behalf of Deputy Director Jennifer Burke. So I'll be focusing on the water supply update, and I do not have information about the recycled water supply update for you, so this will be relatively short. This graph is going to look slightly different than what you are used to seeing when we went to the website to pull this off. The graph now includes that dotted line across the top, the spillway and the flood control pool. You typically are used to seeing this graph zoomed in just below that line, so that's a difference. Another difference you're going to see is it's giving you a percentage of the water supply capacity. You're used to hearing a percentage of the target water supply curve. So I'll give you that verbally, but what you're going to see is going to be slightly different than what you see on the graph. So for Lake Mendocino, it's at 120.7% of the target water supply curve, and it has 82,577 acre feet. The 24-hour average release is 516 cubic feet per second. And then for Lake Pillsbury, it's at 56,209 acre feet, which is 75% of capacity, and the 24-hour release is 1,487 cubic feet per second, with the Potter Valley project diversion having 82 cubic feet per second. So let me bring you a little closer to home here with Lake Sonoma. So for Lake Sonoma, again, you're seeing this graph includes the spillway and the flood control pool line that we normally don't see, usually zoomed in a little differently, and usually you get the number that is the percentage of the water supply pool, so you're going to hear a slightly different number in the verbal part here. So Sonoma has 279,808 acre feet. That's 114.2% of the water supply pool. And the 24-hour average release is 2,995 cubic feet per second. So plenty of water at this point. Wanted to also mention, I've just handed out to you the annual report for the Sonoma Marin Water Saving Partnership. This is for 2015-16. And I just want to mention a little bit about the partnership. It includes 11 agencies, the 8 primary partners, plus the Water Agency and Marin Municipal, and then later Cal American joined. So the initial group was established in 2010. And it was formed as a way for all of our agencies to work together to identify cost-effective measures, to do cost-effective messaging, to have a regional approach to the work that we're doing. And so one of the ways that you will see that is in the report, in the very middle section, you'll see this is a accumulation of all of the efforts of the different agencies together. So that's a way of seeing what we're doing as a region. You'll also see some information about conservation expenditures. So you can get a sense of how much money is being spent to achieve all of those goals. You'll also see the per capita information. So how are we doing on the 20 by 20 requirement? So you'll see that Santa Rosa during that period had gallons per capita day of 85, so lowest in the region for that year. So we're doing quite well. So this Sonoma Marin Saving Water Partnership, you may remember some of the really clever ads that were done during the drought. And so the initial message in 2014 as a region was there's a drought on, turn the water off. And then in 2015 it became there's never enough water to waste, turn the water off. In 2016, we launched this Take It From the Tap campaign regionally, and so the message there was picture a better way, choose tap water. So it really helps our community understand the value of water and our water systems and our regional efforts. And then more recently, at the end of 2016, we have this message, thank you for doing your part. So telling our community, they really did a phenomenal job as a region in reducing our water use in response to the drought and in response to the state's requirements. So that annual report provides you some additional information about all those regional efforts. I also wanted to mention there's an upcoming event. It is the St. Patrick's Day 5K run, and at that run we're going to highlight that we're launching Fix a Leak Week. This occurs every year, and we've been launching it at the St. Patty's Day run for some time now. So March 20th through the 26th is Fix a Leak Week. We are always encouraging our customers to find and fix leaks, but this is a time where we really focus in on it. We send a bill insert, we do radio spots in Spanish and English. so that we can communicate with our folks that this is really a good time to go ahead and find and fix leaks. We also provide drip detective toolkits, and specifically at the St. Patty's Day Run, we'll have a booth there with some employees handing out these kits and talking about finding and fixing leaks. The St. Pat's Day Run is Sunday, March 12th at 3 p.m. at Finley Park. And as folks run, there will be the signs as they run along the route, and they'll see these water messages, these Fix a Leak Week messages as they go. So they're very clever. You run, good for you. Toilets run, not so good. Very clever, right? You're responsible, you fixed your pets. Don't forget to fix your leaks. So these are kind of clever ways to capture folks as they're running along their route to make sure that they understand the message about Fix a Leak Week. The St. Patty's Day Run does require registration, so for anyone who is interested, they do need to register. There's only a couple of days left to register, and again, the run itself is March 12th at 3 p.m. at Finley Park. And that is the water supply update. I'm happy to take any questions, and if there's anything I can't answer directly today, we'll make sure to gather that information and respond to you as soon as possible. But I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you. Any board member Arnone?
I just wanted to comment on the water storage charts. With the recent events up in Orville Dam, it's good to see the addition of the word spillway. And it kind of gives a graphic what you mean. It doesn't, flood control pool doesn't mean as much as spillway. That now has real meaning. So now I'm visualizing what that means. So I agree.
Yeah.
I like that change.
We wondered if that's perhaps why this chart has changed as well, that perhaps it's really important for the public to understand that message as well. So yeah, good observation. Yeah.
Seeing no more questions, thank you very much for your report. Item number 9 is public comments. Seeing no one rise, we have no referrals. We have one written communication. Director Reed.
Chair Galvin and members of the BPU, there's a memorandum about our rate revenue. As you can see, it continues cumulatively to be below budget, but not in a manner that would trigger our response to do something additional about it. It's still within the range that we can expect. So we'll continue to be tracking that moving forward.
Any questions on that? Very good. Any subcommittee reports? Board Member Dowd.
As the chair of the Budget Review Subcommittee and my colleagues, Vice Chair Cowan and Board Member Arnone, we've had 3 subcommittee meetings over the last 2 weeks. What I have to say, though, is that the staff has been doing a yeoman's work getting the information prepared for us to review, and I want to publicly comment that they deserve our applaud for what they have done. We have a system now that's in place, and I don't want our 3-page to go down because I say this, but the asset management program that has been put in place by staff really is an excellent tool for them to ferret out what we ought to be spending money on, where we can save money, and it really, really does make our job on the Budget Review Subcommittee much easier. We had at one time, I think, 6 meetings scheduled, and we were able to get through it all in 3. They are wrapping it up, and they'll be getting an agenda, probably a study session first, and then it'll be an agenda item for our recommendations to go to City Council. But we made a lot of progress, and I want to thank my colleagues, but I also want to really inform everybody how much work staff has done. So thank you.
Great, and I'm sure the full board obviously appreciates the work that the Budget Subcommittee has done and staff, and we look forward to seeing the budget and sending it on to City Council. On that vein, now that we do have a full complement on the board with 2 new board members, I'll be looking at the committee assignments. So in particular, the 2 new board members, if you have any specific interest in serving on one of the standing committees, if you could let me know or let Deputy Director Reed know, and then we may be making some changes to the makeup, obviously, of some of the committees. So, any board member reports? Director's report.
Thank you. I did want to mention that if you saw the Press Democrat this morning, our sustainable garden was mentioned on the Empire News page with a very complimentary and well-written article. So we're very proud of that and the progress that's making. I've been letting you know that we had been discharging this year due to the intense amount of rain, and we have stopped that. And so all of our recycled water is going to the geysers, or we're holding as much as possible in storage for use during the summer. And then since this is my last meeting as acting director, I just hoped you'd indulge me to say just a few things. First off, I wanted to talk about our staff, which, as you know, is our department's most vital asset, and how phenomenal they are. People typically come to work for us because they are interested in protecting the environment and serving the public, and they just continue to do that. We've had a bit of turmoil at the top of the organization for a while, and they just keep doing their jobs, and then they step up and they do a little bit more. So I just want to say, you know, we protect public health by sustaining water resources, the environment, and infrastructure, and our staff believes it. And because they believe it, the reason that they can do what they do is because of this board. And you all are sitting here as unpaid volunteers, and the city charter grants you the operating discretion for this vast enterprise. And you put a lot of time and effort, as board member Dowd just mentioned, 3 meetings, your personal time. Each of those meetings was at least an hour and a half. At least one of them was 2 hours long. And so I just want to say that the effort and the risks that you take and the way that you're willing to support the environment and our staff is a huge benefit to the ratepayers of Santa Rosa, and I wanted to thank you for that.
Well, before we adjourn, I think we all owe Linda a debt of gratitude for the job that she's done stepping in as the acting director. I know she's looking forward to getting back to her own office and just working on budget and financial stuff. But yes, we have a wonderful staff, but it starts at the top, and you've done a phenomenal job. And while we look forward to the new director, we're sorry to see you leave your acting position, but we know you're be in much better shape where you're going to be holding out in your own office. So thank you for all that you've done. The board, I know, is very appreciative, and we look forward to continuing to work with you. So thank you. With that, we'll adjourn the meeting. We'll see you in a couple weeks.